Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is March the 31st. Last day in this month. Going into April Fool's Day. I read an article this morning in Axios about doom scrollers and about people who spend the most amount of time on the internet each day. Unfortunately, I'm in the highest category of that. I think if you were to combine all the hours that I spend scrolling through Twitter, looking at news feeds, et cetera, I'm probably in the top percentile. And the results are actually predictable. It's actually kind of confirming to what I believe. But I don't think it's the point that Axios was making. There is a statement that essentially says the longer that you spend reading about what's going on in the world, the less that you believe in democracy. We're gonna cover a bunch of articles to include that today. But I want you to consider that the more that you know, the less you feel good about democratic process. I don't think it makes you a doomer or a black pillar or a panikin or whatever other made up words that these people who look at you, who are far less informed, have to say about you. That's excuses. I think that is a way to sort of cover that they're ignorant and they don't recognize that all of the information out there tells us we're not voting our way out of this. And the reason we're not voting our way out of it is because we haven't voted our way out of it. In fact, if you were to look at the trend line in my own life, and I think this also holds in your life and it holds in people's lives before you, the United States has marched ever leftward in partisan politics. And maybe for the first time ever, people are divorcing themselves from those binary labels. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm on the left. I'm on the right. And more people are looking and saying, I'm post-partisan. I recognize that this system is not working, not because the system wasn't brilliantly designed, not because the system was not incredibly well crafted, but because we broke the system. It's the equivalent of looking into a machine, adding a bunch of parts that don't make sense, taking out critical things that do, and then miraculously, it still runs at some level, and then being mad about the machine not being as good as it used to be. It's like, well, you broke it. And we can look back to the turn of the last century. Again, when I look and assign blame, it's not boomers, it's not the silent generation, it's not the greatest generation. It predates all of us. The people that were making decisions at the turn of the last century, 1900 to 1915, 1920, the people that made those decisions broke this country. They broke it in a way that could not be repaired, but that doesn't mean that it immediately stopped. It's kind of like draining all the oil out of your vehicle. You can drain all the oil out of your vehicle and still run for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And then when your engine seizes up because it no longer has lubrication and you go, oh my God, what happened? What is the proximate cause of this failure? You might actually consider that the proximate cause was hundreds and hundreds of miles ago with a series of terrible decisions where you no longer ran the machine as it was designed. And gas is $4 a gallon again. By the way, the reason why today's show is named for the $4 a gallon gas, which it doesn't need to be. I mean, I experienced $4.50 a gallon. I experienced about $4 a gallon when I got back to Texas, all the way across. We did a 2,000-mile journey last week. The reason why I brought that up is because it is the front page story on ABC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times, and Axios. And I think they had something about it over on NPR as well. It was ubiquitous across all the platforms. They really wanted you to know that gas is $4 a gallon. Now, before anybody tries to jump down my throat and say, oh, you didn't say that about Biden, you can go back and look. I had thumbnails from the pumps when Joe Biden was president, and I called it out then too. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the predictable and the unpredictable fallout of war. We're going to have Skip Holz from Patriot Protect come on and talk about cybersecurity, because I think that is something that reaches Americans If you didn't have a problem with the Iranians previously, you may have a problem with them now because we've poked that bear, and that bear basically is backed into a corner. And so Kash Patel experienced it, and I think the rest of us are going to experience it in different ways too. So we're going to talk about that in the second half of the first hour as I go on. Man, this show used to be like 45 minutes to an hour, and then it's like there's just so much going on. Unfortunately, I think that's where we're going to end up. Okay, so before we do, let's just say that today's show is sponsored by Patriot Protect. Usually when Skip comes on, he offers a deal. So guys, stand by for that if there's a better deal. But let me just tell you that right now we are in the middle of tax season. I've been putting it off. I freaking hate tax season. I don't like to do my taxes. This is also one of the worst stretches for data breaches in the country. We're going to talk about some of them a little bit later. In just the last 90 days, government contractors have handled Medicaid and benefits that have paid out in 46 states that got hit with ransomware. Over 25 million Americans lost their social security numbers, as in lost them to scammers. Their medical records, also their home addresses, all stolen. Texas Attorney General called it potentially the largest data breach in American history. You had Panera Bread with another 5 million. You had Under Armour, 72 million addresses and customer emails connected. It's a record-setting pace. We had a record-setting year in 2025 for data breaches, over 3,300 in just a single year. And here's what it means to you. That means that scammers, criminals, scumbags, etc., could be trying to steal your data, steal your tax returns, get access to all of your precious financial information. The IRS has flagged over 2 million returns for identity fraud. That was last year. God knows what's coming this year. All right. So Patriot Protect runs what's called the Search and Destroy protocol. You guys can sign up with them. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. They search and scan over 200 data brokers. They run across Google. They look for your personal information, and they remove it from these websites. They keep scanning it. If you think you are not at risk, even the FBI director is at risk. More on that later on today. Make sure you guys have some service that is protecting you from the scammers and the scumbags. I always find that there's always these fun little videos of people that are re-scamming the scammers. Generally speaking, you're not a hacker that's going to go back and stop the guy in India that's trying to take all your stuff. And you may not be scammed today, but the odds are across your lifetime, they average about $600 per year is the average scam for Americans across their lifetime. That's usually like 10 or 20 or 50 or $100,000 at a time. So check them out. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15% on an annual subscription. KYLE when you do check out at patriot-protect.com. Link in the show description. Let's get into today's program. Let's see if I can show you guys why we might be a little bit less optimistic than others. All right, so it's my general consensus, it's my general supposition that democracy equals left-leaning stuff. Remember, democracy equals things that we like if you are on the political left. And the more that you democratize the American system, which was meant to be a constitutional republic, you hear some people say it. Some people forget that we live in a quote-unquote free country. You listen to the Dan Bongino types out there, and now they say, it's a constitutional republic. Yeah, it was. Until we broke the constitutional republic. Now we are moving closer and closer to actual democracy. We have a democratized election of senators. That's not how it was meant to be. That's the 17th Amendment for those of you who are keeping score at home. When you start pushing that all people's voices should be equal, that was not the way that our Constitution was set up. Not all voters are created equal. Not all people's minds and intellects are equal. Not all people are of equal information. And so we are getting lower and lower information people that are making the exact same decisions as you. Look, if you want an example of why I don't like democracy, go look at your closest friends and think about how many of them have horrifically bad relationships. You know, people who are single through their whole life, and you're just like, man, that's a bummer. I really wish that there was someone for them. And maybe it's their fault. I don't know. You go look at somebody and you say, oh, they're on their third divorce right now, and they're about to get another one, you know? That's not a great set of decisions. You've invited the government into your life multiple times to try to divvy up your assets. Why are you doing that? That's not a great plan. You look at people who are in financial difficulty. Sometimes it's by no fault of their own, especially when you're young. But the older you get, the less excuse you have for not insulating yourself against bad things. I lost my job and I didn't get a paycheck for 14 months. That's not a brag. That's a crappy situation. I also had no idea what to do, because I'd put all my eggs in the basket of, I went to the military, I got a set of experiences and skills, then I moved that into law enforcement, and I was able to use those skills in a place where I thought I was going to be able to get a pension. Now, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not 100% sure that I ever thought I was going to be able to retire. And I think people who knew me at the time when I was going through the FBI Academy, my father, my wife, etc., it's like, I'll be lucky if I can do 20 years here, only because the government is crap. And it was pretty obvious to me at the time, but that was the plan. And I didn't really have a backup. And the fact that I'm sitting here in front of a studio and talking to all of you right now, that's pretty evidence that this was not on my agenda. This was not my plan. I think God's plan is bigger than ours, but a lot of times, you still should be trying to row for the shore. A lot of people make terrible, terrible decisions. These are the same people that had one opinion of Donald Trump, voted for it, wanted no new wars, turned around, and immediately were able to replace this is what Donald Trump said, this is how he said he was going to do it, with a completely new set of thoughts. I'd like to share with you guys this. I'm looking for the clip right now. This is a little clip of Donald Trump. This was during his time when he was promising, this is 2023, 2024. He was promising no new wars. I played you a big clip of it yesterday. I'll probably play it again today because it's worth remembering. Sometimes you need to share what people are forgetting. We've now gotten to a point where we've started a war with almost none of what you'd expect there to be. You expect them to sell it to you. You wouldn't expect them to do a 180-degree pivot and then just expect that you're going to go along with it. That's not normal. If somebody came up and said, listen, we're not going to Costco today. Under no circumstances are we going to Costco. We're not going to go to Costco because I hate the crowds on Sunday. We're not going to go to Costco. And at 4 p.m., they go, get in the car. We're going to Costco. And you go like, thought we weren't going to go to Costco today. It's always really crowded on Sundays. I don't want to go to Costco at 4:30 on a Sunday. Are you nuts? No, I always said we were going to Costco on Sunday. It's like, but you didn't. And then you start invading these things. Well, it's like, well, I didn't say we were going to Costco today. I would say that we're always going to Costco because permanently we are in the state of maybe needing to go to Costco. It's so goofy. It's such a goofy position to hold. We've always been at war with Iran. There's a lot of really, really crazy mental gymnastics that have to be done. And so what I'm recognizing right now is a moment that I referred to the other day. It's a Robert Redford film. It's a great movie if you guys have never seen it, Spy Games. And since I'm talking to Skip today, Skip and I tend to do movie references and they just get in my head. Here's the movie reference about the problem with selling something on a short timeline. The expression I used the other day was something like twice or 3 times or 4 times the sex with half or a third or none of the foreplay. And that's what we're getting right now. That's why it feels so raw, I think, to people. There's no foreplay. There's no lead up. The movie reference is here. I actually found it and I couldn't even rip the clip. So I'm actually going to play it on this little website here. I want to share it with you. This is Robert Redford in the iconic role where he's playing a CIA case officer and he's talking about this guy that they needed to butter up basically on very, very short order. And this expression has always stuck with me. It's such an epic thought.
We didn't know when the doctor was going to be giving the Sheik his physical, but it was our one and only opportunity to take him out. So I didn't have the usual time to butter him up, which means we needed twice the sex with half the foreplay.
Twice the sex, half the foreplay. That's what I feel like is going on right now. And it looks something like this. I still remember this campaign. Many of you do as well.
Just as importantly, bringing back impoundment will give us a crucial tool with which to obliterate the deep state, drain the swamp, and starve the warmongers, these people that want wars all over the place, killing, killing, killing. They love killing. And the globalists out of our government. We're going to get the warmongers and the globalists out of our government.
You remember that whole thing? We were going to not do the war thing. I thought that's what America signed up for. So do a lot of you. Yesterday, I had a slightly viral, it's sad because my social medias are so suppressed right now, but I had a slightly viral post where I just showed the video I'm about to show you. And people went, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. And in response to the video that I placed, Laura Loomer, people like Laura Loomer, are playing 1980s, late 1970s, 480p, 4:3 aspect square ratio TV footage from before when she was even born, by the way. Before Laura Loomer was even born, Donald Trump was speaking at a Rotary Club somewhere and talking about Iran. So let it be known that the move that you're supposed to make mentally is you're supposed to believe that you didn't actually listen to Donald Trump on the campaign trail. You didn't listen to the clip that I'm about to play you, where all of his proxies and he said, we're not going to go to war with Iran. We don't want to have no new wars. We want to stop it all now. And you're supposed to believe that 1980s Rotary Club Donald Trump was the reason that people came out and voted. There's a lot of evidence that that's not accurate. There's a reason why people who are not Republicans, who generally speaking do not identify on the political spectrum in a way that is very easy to define. People like me, people that are right of all of that stuff. There's a reason why we're disappointed. It's because, you said it. And then you didn't give us any transition. You didn't give us any foreplay. You didn't try to even sell us on the idea of it. You just immediately pivoted to something. So you got to tell me, is it 1980s Rotary Club Donald Trump speaking in New York on a TV, cable access TV? Or was it this that sold you on the idea that there was no new wars?
I am the candidate of peace. I am peace. People don't believe that. I am peace.
A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for a man who wants to end wars, not start them.
We do not want war with Iran. We actually want peace. The Iranians are clearly not very good at war. Perhaps they should follow President Trump's lead and give peace a chance.
Kamala's campaigning with warmongers like Liz Cheney. How do you think that is? She picks Liz Cheney, whose father virtually destroyed the Middle East. Liz Cheney, she talks big, I want war. She always wants war. Every time I was with her in the White House, we should attack this nation, that nation, nations that people never even heard of, we should attack. She's a big tough guy. She sits back in Washington, we ought to go and attack Iran, Iraq. We're going to attack everybody. That's why I broke up with her. All she wanted to do is go to war with everybody. These war hawks, they want to draft your kids to die in wars, and they will never fight themselves. We'll stay around the country for 15 years, just bomb the hell out of everybody, make everybody miserable. Nobody knows why we're there, the wars that never end. These endless wars that we've been in, I've gotten us out of so many. We don't want to get into wars. We're tired of fighting. I'm the only president in the last 84 years that didn't start a war. Under Trump, we will have no more wars. No more war.
No more wars, his words, not mine. I didn't make this up. This is not something that came out of nowhere. You can't claim that we were always at war when, in fact, you said that your whole thing is that you don't start wars and you end wars, and then you started one. All right. Now, let me get to the explanation. Super scrollers sour on democracy, so saith this poll. This is Avery Lotz writing at Axios. The share of social media users who agree democracy is the best form of government is dictated in this poll below. And this makes way too much sense. This was one of the front page things. This is one of the top 5 stories on Axios for the morning. I think it makes perfect sense. People who spend 5+ hours a day scrolling through social media, only 57% of them think that, quote unquote, democracy is the best form of government. Heavy social media users are less likely to think democracy is the best form of government and more likely to stray from democratic norms, according to a newly released study by the Charles F. Kettering Foundation and Gallup Polling. The big picture is that new research suggests social media is reshaping how people engage with democracy, expanding access to ideas while contributing to a more fractured media environment. Well, that's one takeaway from it. Zoom in. Among U.S. adults who don't use social media or use it for less than an hour a day, 72-73% respectively rank democracy as the best form of governance. And I'm going to tell you, the people who are not paying attention that do this, the people that are the least informed, of course they think democracy is the best form of government because it's the only thing that they actually get. They get 1 hour of Fox News a day. They're fed garbage. They're fed it on Rachel Maddow. They're fed it on Morning Joe. They're fed it on MSNBC. They're feeding it over on CNN. They're feeding it on NBC. They're feeding it over on all the major networks. Democracy, democracy. Even Donald Trump, even the people who are supposedly on the political right use the word democracy in a positive way. But we're not supposed to have a democracy here. We were supposed to have kind of like an oligarchy, for whatever it's worth. It was supposed to be only landed white males that were supposed to vote. Those were people who had skin in the game, that owned the means of production, that were in charge of making sure they provided a living and were responsible for those who worked for them. I mean, I'm not being mean about it. I'm just saying, look back historically, since we're coming up on the 250th year anniversary of the United States, it's worth considering where we came from. The concept of noblesse oblige was the thing that people used to say in Europe, that there was an obligation of the nobles to take care of those that were working for them and under them and around them. And it's kind of anti-American in some ways, because we've sort of said that we don't have a class structure, but we do have a class structure in this country. To ignore it is ridiculous. And if you ignore that we have a class structure, what you end up with is the K-shaped economy. Right now, quote unquote, our betters, which you hear people like Tucker Carlson talk about it. You hear a lot of politicians try to act like they're not one of them. But if you have millions and millions of dollars and you don't live under the same situation, if you can buy better justice than most, yeah, you're not living under the same situation. We know that. We saw this in the OJ trial. Going back into my childhood, people were like, if you have enough money, then you can buy the justice that you think that you deserve. And vice versa. If you have no money at all, you might get steamrolled. Ask a J6er. I was in the business of trying to find an attorney when I left the FBI. And everywhere I called, I had law firms say, there's a couple things I'm worried about. Number one, I'm not sure that we can defend you politically because there would be blowback on our law firm. And number two, everybody is looking for pro bono representation right now because none of these J6ers have any money. The government found a bunch of people that, generally speaking, were broke, were not prepared for some big lawsuit, were not prepared for criminal defense, and they got freaking crushed. And we learned that our justice system was exactly what you thought it was. Super scrollers souring on democracy might be one of the funniest ideas. I would say that enlightened members who look around at the bad decision theater that takes place, if you guys want to see bad decision in action, go enlist. Maybe now, not the time, if you don't want to go and hang out in Iran or the Middle East again. But if you want to see bad decision theater in action, go enlist. I watched 17-year-old boys get ready to marry the first stripper that held their hand, who knew that they were about to get that TRICARE, which is government healthcare services, who knew that they would get half of his E1 through E3 paycheck. I watched 19-year-olds who'd been in and gotten their first reenlistment bonus after 2 years blow the whole thing on a Ford Mustang with an 18 or a 20% interest rate, and that's going back to 2010, 2011. They had enough money to pay the monthly payments with no money left over for insurance, for gas. They never even thought about it. It never even occurred to them that there were additional costs other than buying the thing. And I watched young men who make life and death decisions, who are sent into crazy places to go do wild things, sit in the parking lot of their barracks and listen to the stereo on the car that they couldn't afford to start and run and go anywhere in. And they sure as hell couldn't go to a bar because they were underage. That's bad decision theater. You want to sour on democracy? Meet more people. There's nothing amazing about having everybody have an equal say. How many of you would let any of your neighbors make most decisions for you? The answer should basically be none. That's it. Souring on democracy, the more you see people writing things on social media, sharing information on social media, the more you realize that they are tribal, they're emotional, they're unreasoning, they make terrible decisions. They post self-owns. I had a lady yesterday who decided to start challenging me about, I don't even know what the hell she was challenging me about. I just remember that it was a really emotional response. She was telling me that she's conservative. She was a boomer, single, childless, living in California, calling me a leftist. And I'm like, I own more guns than you have friends. I've served this country in several different roles. I go to church with my family. I've got 4 children. We're homeschooling. There's not a lot more conservative than you can be. If you were to look at like right-wing extremists, they would find people like me on that side, that if the political left was going to define them. Meanwhile, she's paying her taxes in California and funding Gavin Newsom's abortions. Look, you are what you pay for, right? If you write the check, like I'm paying for that Iran war when I write my check. I know it. I'm grossed out by it. If you live in California, you've chosen to live there. She deleted her account. She responded to me over and over and over and over again. I went, why is that lady? She thinks she's on my team and she's mad that I'm not playing for the team. Well, it's because I can read. So yeah, I've soured on democracy, and many of you will as well, which means you know that this is outside of our hands. People that are people of faith don't have to worry about whether or not democracy will save us. It won't. And the more time you spend there, the more you realize this is pretty bad. I'll give you a couple other examples. If all you got was this, would you be super excited about what we're about to do? Let me see. I think I've got the story right here. This is the special operations bit, I think. Let me make sure I've got the right story here. Here we go. CBS News. Special Operations Forces, Army troops in the Middle East, sources say. Okay, so that's like a non-exciting, this is a this is not a fluff job. This is just a reporting of the facts. So good for Jennifer Jacobs writing at CBS. Hundreds of U.S. Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, are now in the Middle East, as well as thousands of Marines and Army paratroopers, according to sources familiar with the deployments. The sources said having forces in the region gives President Trump military options in Iran. You remember for that war that we weren't going to do? Including operations that could target opening the Strait of Hormuz, take the oil from Korak Island, or seize Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. All things that were not part of the original layout. All I heard was, originally, we were interested in regime change, but we weren't going to do regime change, but we were interested in it, but we weren't going to do it. We were hoping the Iranians would do it, but we weren't going to do it. Then I also heard we were going to go after ballistic missile capabilities. None of those things are in that list. And then the last one was that we were going to make sure that they didn't have nukes, apparently. And it's been very clear, even though it's been muddy. The New York Times first reported the forces arriving in the region. U.S. CENTCOM has declined to comment. President Trump said on Truth Social yesterday morning that his administration was continuing to negotiate. Now imagine you read that and you're like, oh, well, I don't really want troops. I'm not really sure why we're going there. I heard we were energy independent, that we had enough oil, that we are a net exporter of oil and not an importer. So maybe we don't do this. Now imagine you don't read. You spend minimal time on social media getting contrary takes, and all you get is Jesse Waters with rock music explaining to you how freaking badass these commandos are. If this is your news, yeah, maybe you think, quote unquote, democracy is the way. It's also the reason why I don't. Enjoy.
Fox News alert, commandos from the most advanced special ops teams in the world have just arrived in theater. The Army Rangers and Navy SEALs. And they're joining the 3,500 sailors and Marines that have just taken position in the Middle East on the USS Tripoli. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is also on board, and a ship full of transport and strike fighter aircraft ready to be brought into the action. Alongside of them, the most elite paratrooper unit on Earth, the 82nd Airborne Division.
Do you think he's ever met somebody from the 82nd Airborne Division? And by the way, if you were in the 82nd Airborne, if you describe yourself as the most elite paratrooper division on Earth, will you please put that in the comments below? Thank you.
We're ready to hit the silk as the president issues a final warning. Quote, if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island.
Yeah, democracy, crushing it. Jesse Waters ripping it. Jesse Waters, who probably gets manicures on a weekly basis based on the way that he looks. Like, he's a very polished looking prep school kind of guy. Do you think Jesse Waters has ever been in a physical fight? I got in a fight at freaking airborne school. When I was at Fort Benning, I had some Army little jerk get in my face, and he was really small, and I'm not that tall, and he was small. And he wanted to tell me what a badass killer he was, so he kept it in my face and calling me Air Force, which I'm not a big fan of. And I ended up grabbing his trachea. Not his neck, by the way, his trachea. It's a smaller pinch. Very effective. Do you think Jesse Waters has ever had anyone grab him by the throat, put him in a puddle of mud when it was like 30 degrees outside, froze his butt off after he went, and then sat in a parachute shack with a jocked up, some T-10 Delta parachute? You think he's ever done that? They're going to hit the silk. You know what the silk is like? It's like some heavy bastard fell faster than he should have outside because they didn't measure the stick right. And so you have some 250-pound guy at the end of the stick falling out of the back of the plane, and he lands and he runs across your silk, which is absolutely terrifying. Then he falls underneath you, steals your air, and then you're on his silk. You think Jesse Waters knows anything about what he's talking about? We have like 30% casualties when we paratroop people in. How about a sober voice that knows a little bit about, I don't know, the danger of what we're talking about instead of freaking rock music, rockin' on Fox News?
So yeah, your initial assault into Karg Island is going to be mighty thin because those aircraft have to cycle, and that's assuming you don't have any losses from maintenance or from missiles. Do you do a mass drop of the 82nd on the Karg Island? Again, that's pretty sporty, and an airborne invasion in a place that has thousands and thousands of missiles, not to mention the Iranians have been learning. They've certainly been paying attention to modern drone warfare and have certainly implemented FPVs down to the squad level. I mean, you see videos of the Israelis in southern Lebanon losing tanks, losing armored personnel carriers to the same FPVs that the Russians have been using with great effect in Ukraine. So
this is Eric Prince. He's talking about the sporty possibility of trying to take Karg Island. Sporty is a military term for it's going to be really dangerous. It sounds better when you say sporty, like, oh, yikes. Those seas look really sporty in 10-foot swells. At least he has some sanity about what he's saying. And you'll notice people who have a little bit of understanding sound very different than Jesse Waters with his rock music.
It is, again, a fight against Iran. They're not Arabs. They're Aryans. They are a highly intelligent, highly skilled warfighters, and it would not be the pushover by comparison that you see of the Iraqi army that worked.
Eric Prince made a lot of money in war. And as time goes on, you can see if he's questioning the logic of what we're talking about here, and Jesse Waters, the adulterer, whatever, 47-year-old, never served, probably never been punched in the face from what I can tell. I mean, he looks like he should have been punched in the face at some point in his life, but my guess is that he probably didn't experience it based on the cockiness that I see. Kind of gross. So what are the news covering on top of that? Yeah, CBS, they're giving you the accurate presentation. This is why I kept mentioning Costco. I couldn't help it. Usha Vance, that's the second lady. Remember, we used to have a second man? That was really weird, wasn't it? The second lady has a disagreement with J.D. Vance. She's going to talk about the 2028 election and shopping at Costco. This is an exclusive story from NBC. She sat down with NBC for a one-on-one with the Today Show. I think that's the lady whose mom was kidnapped, actually. Isn't it? Kidnapped / thrown out in the desert or whatever. The second lady was registered as a Democrat until 2014, told NBC News she sometimes has thoughts that are idiosyncratic and don't line up with one political party. Do you know what would make that best? What if we could get like a podcast? What if we could get like the second lady doing a podcast to teach kids that reading is, she's going to do the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good on a podcast. I was just thinking if we could get another podcast from the White House or from the Naval Observatory, if we could just get like one more stream of content, that would probably fix all of it, right? Would that make it for you? Let's talk about what that would look like.
Right now, she's launching a new podcast for kids and families, Story Time with the Second Lady.
Because when we read, we grow. We will have someone come in, a special reader, we're calling them, read a fun book, have a very short little conversation, and then invite children to pick up books on their own. It's sort of just an advertisement for reading.
Why is this an issue that you care so deeply about?
Well, I have a longstanding interest in education. It seemed like a really natural fit because we have young children right now. But as I was teaching them to read, I was starting to see some of the statistics out there about the decline in literacy rates, about the fact that this is really a long-term trend, and it's worrisome.
Right now, she's launching a new podcast for kids and families, Story Time with the Second Lady.
Because when
So there you go. When you read, you learn that gas prices are up. CNN lead story, going to show you. Here's the New York Times. They have a whole section on gas prices, which is kind of wild. Average gasoline prices hit $4 in the United States. It's a headache for drivers and for Donald Trump. You've got the average gas price graphic here, which I think is actually really useful. Going back to 2016, it was right around $2. It was in the $2 range. Up to 2018, we saw a spike moving into COVID. We saw a weird drop here and then another sort of spike and then a decline. And then as Biden came in, it just climbed this mountain all the way up to $5 a gallon. Been slowly leveling off since a high point in about late 2022. So the Biden gas prices were actually on the way down, kind of bumpy, but on the way down. And now we've spiked back up to a localized high, which is the highest it's been since about late 2022 when it fell from $5 a gallon. And it's on the way up very, very sharply. And there are many stories about it, including stories about this tanker here. This is a Kuwaiti Petroleum Corporation tanker that was damaged by an attack that's been attributed to Iran. I don't know what that means. I guess it means that it could have been us and it was a friendly fire scenario, kind of like they shot down our jets. It's been attributed. Oh, you guys can't see it here. Let me scroll down past the fold. Here it is. Near Dubai, this is the Kuwaiti tanker, which got damaged. But you have an entire section up here. All of these 4 stories, food distribution. Let's do one of those. Let's do these stories. Here you go. Will it hurt his approval ratings? Yeah, clearly it will, because he said otherwise. So here you have the $4 a gallon gas story. I'll put this in the links if you guys want to read about what the New York Times has to say. It took 2 writers to decide that having higher gas prices when he campaigned on cheap gas and mean tweets. I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. Here's democracy for you. The gas isn't cheap anymore, and the tweets really aren't that mean. They're just kind of obnoxious. They're kind of dumb, because we can remember the old ones. It'd be funny if you were owning people. You could be a jerk when you're winning. It's hard to be a jerk when you're not winning and have people like you for it. By the way, they announced that there's going to be a Donald Trump library, and the presidential library is going to be in downtown Miami. It's going to be this enormous skyscraper. Shocker. Okay, here's another story. Food distribution costs. We brought this up the other day, and I've talked about it on our call-in show when we had people come in. Fuel surcharges being added. If you want fresh food, it's going to be delivered by what? A truck. That means it's going to cost you more money. Food distributors are adding surcharges if they can. Some trucking companies are going to go out of business. If they have locked in long-term contracts where they cannot adjust to fuel prices, then they're going to be screwed. And the ones that can, they're going to put a fuel surcharge on, and you're going to see bumps. As my buddy said the other day, Steve Friend quoted, I think, Ted Cruz claiming some sort of like big win. And he said, ground beef is $6.75 a pound. Let that put it in perspective. When ground beef is almost $7 per pound, the most cheap and average bacon cheeseburger American sort of thing, right? I remember watching bacon prices climb while I was, while Biden was in office, while I was working for the federal government. It's not exactly a flex. And they're not dealing with the domestic agenda. What I do see is this weird push about the midterms, which is kind of wild. So here we go. Fuel costs rise because of the war in Iran. This woman writing about this says that chickens, pigs, cattle, 100 acres in South Carolina, making tough decisions. He's going to add a $5 surcharge for deliveries. They do home deliveries of meats locally. He serves 20 different restaurants and obviously some people as well. Simply raising the overall prices wasn't an option for the fourth generation business. The company's products are already expensive. So now they have to put a fuel surcharge on. And that way it's transparent, explaining what the costs are. But to cover some of the increased fuel costs, we have to be able to put it on there. You're going to end up paying for this on the front end and on the back end. We're going to pay for this in a lot of different ways. I think there's a couple other stories here that were worth punching out here. This is my other favorite, because we heard yesterday that we've already won the war, but we're going to continue the war. They've already been defeated. And if they don't recognize it, we're going to defeat them even more. More on that in maybe a little bit here. But the live updates coming out of the New York Times is that after a month of war, he says that Iran somehow retains the ability to keep striking. He's conceded that U.S.-Israeli attacks are not thwarting the Iranian missile capabilities, but we've already been told from the White House podium that they in fact have already won the war and that the Iranians have been defeated. They just need to recognize that they've been defeated. Kind of gives you another movie reference, again, since we're going to talk to Skip in just a second here. It reminds me of a movie reference from Gladiator. You guys remember the movie Gladiator? And Russell Crowe is out there and he's mustering the armies, which are the superior technology, and they are the superior fighters. They are technologically more advanced. They have all of the siege engines and so on of the Romans. And so he's General Maximus and he's standing there and this guy walks up to him. Because I remember having this conversation when I was in Biloxi, Mississippi with one of my team sergeants. He walks up. And it was a joke that we would do because you'd look at these guys that had not yet been punched in the face. And the lieutenant comes up to the general and says, "A people should know when they're conquered." And Russell Crowe's character looks him right in the eye and he says, "Would you? Would I?" These people apparently don't know that they've already been conquered, per Carolyn Levin. A 28-year-old pregnant woman with blonde hair standing in front of a podium in the United States told the Iranians that they were conquered, and apparently they didn't get that message, so they're still fighting back. And Pete Hegseth has to acknowledge it. It's really hard because, as I said, we're now doing twice the sex with half the foreplay. They didn't butter us up that this was going to happen. We were told it was going to be over immediately. It was going to be in days. Then it was going to be in weeks. Now they're talking about years, including the vice president. And they apparently have their ability to strike, even though we've destroyed their ability to strike. We've gotten rid of all of their ballistic missile capabilities. We've killed off all the regime leaders. Why are they still there? Oh, because maybe we're not getting the truth from our government, it turns out. And so the previous lying press secretary, Sideshow Bob, Kareem Jean-Pierre, doing the same thing that this one does. They all get up there and they just mouth talking points. So you wonder why people who listen to enough of this think that democracy is not the answer? It actually should be really straightforward for you. Guys, if you're listening to the program over on YouTube, would you give us a like? If you're watching on Rumble, I'd appreciate the same thing. If you have not subscribed to one or both of those channels, go ahead and do so now. That'd be great. We'd appreciate it. If you're watching on X, join us where the live chat is. The live chat is the place to be. Our live chatters are constantly adding value to this program. I see you guys in my peripheral, and I see that you're discussing this and other topics, which is fun. I almost always hear that people who watch the live show end up going back and watching the program or listening to the program. And you can do that over at Spotify. It's KyleSeraphinShow.com. Go ahead and leave us a comment over there. Things you agree with, I want to hear about it. Things you disagree with, add some facts to it so it actually has some value, but put that in there too. I don't mind people disagreeing. I actually enjoy it. Sometimes I learn from it as long as you come at it in the same good faith that I am. I'm going to try and present evidence of what I'm talking about. So if you guys want to do that, in any case, you may hear an ad from Spotify right about now. That's the way we monetize this program. We're going to go over and talk about some of the fallout and the long-term consequences about this conflict in Iran. And one of the unforeseen consequences is reaching into the homeland and dealing with cyber attacks. Kash Patel just dealt with it recently. I told you guys last week that I had a conversation with Skip, so we're going to bring him on and we're going to do a discussion about what does that look like and how do those risks look beyond $4 a gallon gasoline. All right, folks, as I teased out last week, I mentioned that we were going to be talking to Skip Holtz, who is the founder of Patriot Protect, and discussing a little bit about cybersecurity, especially in the wake of the FBI director and his sort of embarrassing hack, leak, hack, dump technology situation, his cyber cache reveal, or what was it, spider cache? Skip, welcome to the program. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share.
Hey, listen, it's always a pleasure. And as you know, anytime I exit the program, last time I came on, I always say, I'm going to come back and there's going to be some stuff that's going to be terrible and we're going to have to cover it. And here I am. Today is absolutely no exception. Embarrassing is exactly the word, that we have a sitting FBI director that has very personal information. Although it could have been less embarrassed. It could have been more embarrassing. You know, it turns out the guy just likes Cuban cigars. I mean, you know, what can we do?
Yeah, it could have been Hunter Biden type stuff where he's got underage prostitutes allegedly or something to that effect. So, the meme. Skip, the meme is someone sent this. It was a guy and he's like smiling against a brick wall. And he was like, every single Kash Patel picture is this. And it's like, I'm having a really good time with all my friends. They're just out of frame. Because he seemed like he seemed like a lonely dude.
Definitely a like kind of under the Tuscan sun feeling to his leaks. He's just trying to live, laugh, love. He's out there trying to find his best life. And, the poor guy is just trying to find himself. And now we saw all that process.
Yeah, we got to see all of it. Brutal. So as I brought up yesterday, and I'm going to share with the audience again, if you guys didn't listen to yesterday's program, this is not a new leak. I'm sorry, this is not a new hack. This is a new dump. So we're going to talk a little bit about Iranian cyber capabilities, maybe the history of what these guys are involved in. But for those of you who didn't see it, this will be in today's show notes in the quotes over on Rumble and on YouTube. This is reports from December of 2024. Kash Patel, Trump's pick to lead the FBI prior to being FBI director, was targeted in an Iranian hack. There's a lot of implications from the national security side I talked about yesterday, as far as the FBI being able to get into your stuff and quote unquote protect you by also finding out what you're vulnerable and what sort of things that the Iranians may have got. But Skip's going to talk about it from the sort of maybe everyman perspective, because at that time, Kash was not a government official. He was just a regular dude with a Gmail account like many of you might be.
Yeah, so that's exactly the point, is that at any given, what this implies is at any given point, if you are, some sort of political operative or not, or just within the kind of political sphere, which he has been for a really long time, you are being scraped by state level actors. It's very possible that that's the case for all these people. He was no exception, is that, he being in the kind of sphere is enough of a attack surface for him to want for state actors to want to get his personal information. they keep it, they have it on file for when it becomes convenient for them to dump something on you and make you look extremely embarrassing. For instance, when you become the FBI director and, the top cop for the United States. So yeah, of course that there are state level actors in this capacity that are constantly scraping right now people that are in the sphere or on the ascent to hold on to that information for when there is a politically expedient point for it to be deployed. And now is that time when Iran is being attacked. Of course, they're going to use this to their advantage.
Yesterday, I made kind of the connection, and maybe you can tell me what you think too. It seems to me that because of the way the internet works, because of the capabilities of cyber being kind of an anonymized attack, it's not just the Iranians who are able to go and say, hey, here, we're going to dump what we have on Kash Patel. Theoretically, anybody, whether they be Russians, whether they be Chinese, Israelis, North Koreans, like anybody that was targeting Kash Patel or somebody in the Trump administration can now drop it out under cover of, well, there's an active conflict with Iran. We might as well make it look like we're part of the Iranian hack system, and we can embarrass anybody and it not have blowback on us. Can you kind of talk about the sort of anonymization and how that works for these actors?
Of course, it's super possible that China and Russia have had, or North Korea or whatever, not that they deploy this as much, but like that they also had this information. And just it was because Iran is in the position that they're in that they ended up deploying it. And who's to say that this wasn't, that there's stuff like this that isn't happening to other officials right now, and that it's just being decided on when it's going to be deployed. I remember, if we're on the topic of FBI directors, like when James Comey's personal Twitter account was just found by some Joe Schmo, and it was like through James Comey's son's Instagram account, and then found the same handle that ended up being used on Twitter as well. So James Comey just recycled that to opine on like the latest James Patterson novel or whatever. It wasn't anything particularly interesting. And then the Joe Schmo Twitter user outed it, and James Comey did the I'm not even mad, like Will Ferrell Anchorman meme. Right. And that's and again, aside from even being FBI director, James Comey also was the general counsel for Bridgewater Associates, which had the largest assets under management of any hedge fund or whatever in the world. So point being is that there is interest from state level and stochastic cyber terrorist actors all the time that are looking for this information. The question is there when does that chip get cashed in to deploy? And this was just no exception here.
Fox News is covering it. They have a whole section called Hackers. This is kind of your world, not mine so much. Do you want to kind of talk about this? We'll run through this article here, but people understand the sort of they're calling out why you want to lock down tech. This is your world. Again, this is the reason why we have this service. But
when I saw this, I almost lost my mind, of course, because I'm like, look, what is this? Is kind of like a folksy article explaining to the everyman, to the layman, like, hey, this is why it's important for you to use two-factor authentication. This is why it's important for you to not reuse your passwords between work and home or whatever. And the reality is what it's completely omitting here is that you, a regular person that has a regular job or whatever, needs to have the same, if not better, cybersecurity sanitization, hygiene in your life than does the FBI director that has state level actors fighting it, trying to infiltrate his personal Gmail account. And what they did put in here, which obviously, made my eyes go wide, is at the bottom, they said you need to, try to lock down your information. And of course, this is what I live and breathe every day, which is reducing everybody's attack surface such that data brokers don't publish information about you and have it readily available. Your most intimate details of your name, your address, your relatives' names, your phone number, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, if they can get, an FBI director's email address, you're nothing. compared to that, like you are multitudes more exposed to somebody that's just, any cyber criminal or scammer looking to make a quick buck. And this is just no exception. It's just like what this reads to me is like, if you haven't done anything already, you are way too late. The best time to take care of yourself is yesterday. The second best is today. So, what can you do? This happened to a sitting FBI director.
Yeah, nothing like that. Letting know people were curious. This is not a classified system, so this is a very recognizable thing. This was not a target that was some government protected. The FBI saying they didn't have any breaches, although they've had breaches recently. In fact, we found out that they lost some stuff to the Title III access, and maybe some of their wiretapping capabilities were also being targeted. So there's constantly, if you're online, you have exposure. I kind of want to share this with the audience who's probably never seen me do this. Every once in a while, somebody will decide to be kind of a jerk towards me. Shocker. And Skip, when they do, we have this little interaction where they'll say something stupid. They'll have an anonymous account. They'll use a handle, just like you were talking about Jim Comey, and then they'll repeat it somewhere else that's got something more personal on it. And it'll be on Reddit. It'll be on Telegram. It'll be on Instagram. It'll be tagged in a picture on Facebook or something like that. And from just very, very little, and I'm a fairly sophisticated, capability, and I used to do this for a living, but I'll find a picture of you standing in your living room, and I'll send you a picture of your living room from realtor.com if you decide to screw with me, because once you've given me an opportunity to associate a name, a general location or part of the country, anything personal about you, we can scrape all that stuff. And then, I'm not AI, I'm just a guy. But I've found guys that were acting like jerks, had completely anonymous profiles, and I'll send a picture of their back porch. And I'll be like, hey, it's time to trim your bushes or whatever it is, just to let them know I can find you very easily. And I'm just one guy with some, open source tools. There's nothing there that's sophisticated. I didn't buy or hack anything. And so even the fact that you run, behind the sort of this shadowy thing, we were joking on which hoodied figure do you want to be today? Associating your name and your face together sometimes is enough to make that happen. So all of you guys that have Facebook or have social media over the years, you all have exposure. And, I already know what I'm biting into. Like the possibility, the government already grabbed my entire Gmail account. So if the Iranians get it, they're not going to find anything more interesting than the U.S. government did. But this exposure, I think it's fun to kind of point out that even a Kash Patel, who kind of acts clownish sometimes, but he's, Fox News is acting like this is somehow crazy or wild. Donald Trump Jr., Todd Blanche, Lindsey Halligan, all people who have been previously targeted.
Look, Kyle, what you're explaining and how, just explaining how you would go about it if you wanted to. And as far as I know, you are not a sophisticated cyber criminal. That is exactly what they're doing. That's the process that they do, is that they take this little piece of information and then just bulldog it. They just look to see, they try to see if you've recycled your MyFitnessPal password and see if that, and look, when we do our Patriot Protect blackout service, like we are scraping the dark web using the tools that we have to see which, passwords and information, your emails, what is it associated and what leaks are they associated with? And cyber criminals can use that information to, exactly as you describe, find whether or not you've recycled that username. That's how that guy found James Comey's Twitter account.
Right.
Is just exactly as you described. And the exposure that everyday people have is massive if you've not taken any action to try to reduce your attack surface, because there's all sorts of attack vectors that they can use in order to find that information if they find that your juice is worth the squeeze, whether that it's just a scammer trying to make money off of you, to find whether you're recently widowed and then therefore a potential attack for like a love scam or something like that. There's a million different angles that they can take, all of which are pretty prescribed. They're all kind of like pre-written out how they do it. But what they need to do beforehand is find through your attack surface if you're worth the squeeze. They're measuring ROI like anything else.
Will you define the term? I like it, and I think I have a sense of it, but the term attack surface, what falls into that, and how does that surface expand or contract based on it?
Absolutely. So the attack surface by definition is literally just like the different ways you can be exposed, right? Like If you are standing, in a t-shirt and shorts in front of a guy with a sword, there is an enormous attack surface that he can inflict damage with. But if you put on a suit of armor, then you reduce your attack surface. And so that allegory in cybersecurity is just like, is your name, an address, an email address, and phone number and relatives' names exposed and searchable on Google? Or have you taken steps to reduce that and eliminate that attack surface? Do you recycle your passwords, et cetera, et cetera? So everybody gets it. And it's a pain to have to do so if you don't have help. But the point is making sure your attack surface is reduced so that you don't expose yourself to vulnerability.
I just had to pull it up because it occurred to me that there is a meme that was about this. I remember seeing this all the time during the Biden administration. They'd be like, they had captive press corps and a fake set of the White House and screen phone calls. And then you had like the arrow going through the night. You remember? And,
oh my God.
And it looks something like this. And so it's like, all these things that you've got going on. And then it would be, like whatever the breach in the armor is, it's like the Let's Go Brandon. What's the one I remember? I've got that somewhere on my phone where it was, Joe Biden takes a phone call. They did all this stuff set up and they screened it out. And the guy goes on this whole story. And then at the end of the Christmas call, this was in 2021, he's like, and let's go Brandon, sir. And he was like, I agree. Let's go Brandon. He had Joe Biden.
I think about that. Let's go Brandon. I agree.
It's so good.
I think about that all the time. That was my first inclination. I think then I was just like, oh, this guy's sundowning in front of all of us.
He has no idea what's going on. Nobody's telling him the real truth. In any case, all of us have that kind of a vulnerability, even with all the best things you could do. And again, I'm more exposed than most because my face, my name, my location are all exposed to people.
Correct.
And I'm a bigger target in some ways, but I'd also say that it's pretty funny to think that if any of you have any money or any net worth, and then if you also, have a Facebook account where you're doing things and maybe you just pissed off the wrong person, you've said something and you've irritated them and they want to go hack you just for sport, because there are people that do that, right? And then they'll leak it onto the dark web or sell it just because it funds their sort of shenanigans doing something else that may not even be their jam. They just found you as a target of opportunity as opposed to like that's their life work.
Totally correct. And that is exactly what happened here with this Stryker breach. If I may, because this is one of the most consequential breaches that's happened, easily in the last year or two. Let me, if I may, I want to give the folks a little brief history of Iranian cyber attack stuff. Because
let me read the headline so people who are just listening and are not seeing this can kind of catch up with us here. It says medical device giant hit by global network disruption after a cyber attack possibly linked to a pro-Iranian group. The Michigan-based medical device company Stryker, with a Y. Folks, I used Stryker when I was on the ambulance service, so they make a lot of mechanical stretchers and self-loading stretchers and a bunch of really expensive, nice technology. And so they're in this space in a big way. They experienced a cyber attack as employees confirmed the inability to access systems. This is a story that's written up by Fox Business, actually. Go ahead and give us the history on maybe the who, and then let's talk about the how, and then we'll say what's exposed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Iranian cyber operations have evolved a lot, as we can see, in the last kind of 15, 16 years. You may remember back in 2010, the Stuxnet virus, which was developed by the United States and Israel to attack the uranium enrichment plants that Iran had. Literally, it was just a virus that went into their centrifuges to make them spin really, really fast and therefore break.
Okay.
And that was kind of like a awakening for Iran to say oh, this is from our little turtle-shelled kingdom here. We can inflict damage elsewhere. And so they started out, one of their biggest operations was in 2012 to hit Aramco, Saudi Arabia's, the national oil company. They wiped out 35,000 computers in a single day and left a picture of a burning American flag on the screen, which... And that was also the same year that they
stuff.
Say again?
That's like a movie where, it's like you get to the dancing, you didn't say the magic word. That's some movie stuff, hacker stuff.
First off, I literally did that. I literally said that this morning. The Dennis Nedry, of course, from Jurassic Park. So appreciate you calling that out. And I'll tell you when we get to the Stryker hack, that they did the same exact thing. You may remember if your bank account was inaccessible in 2012 because they hit Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo with like a collective like 300 hours of downtime. Huge stuff. So they later on, they hacked a dam in the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, back to Jurassic Park, they're like the velociraptors testing the perimeter for weaknesses in the electric fence. Just seeing where they can inflict damage. And then, as time goes on, of course, they were hacking and making many different problems in the 2020 election. And if what they did, by the way, again, this is like the attack surface, and like it's never encryption that fails. It's never, like the two-factor authentications that fails. What they often probe is employee and like human interactions, and they do spear phishing and phishing attacks to try to get somebody to click on a link that brings them to a malicious site, and it's always human error. In the case of the Saudi Aramco hack, they made like fake LinkedIn accounts to interact and develop rapport with Aramco employees in order to get in. This is how it works. And so,
yeah, this is like, is that sort of an advanced version of what we used to call social engineering, or maybe they still call social engineering, where you're building exactly networks of people, and then people are always the problem. It's not the mechanics, it's not the encryption, it's not the data in motion. It's the fact that you wrote your password down on a sticky note and you left it there when the guy broke into your house. He had your sticky note.
That is literally exactly what it is. And so in the case with Stryker, what they did was, this was allegedly, allegedly from the group that claimed that they did it, that this was retaliation for the all-girls school that was bombed. And what they did was they hacked Stryker. They probably had known that there was for some time that there was a vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And again, like you talking about in the ambulance force, it started out, the hack was found because in the Maryland emergency management system, there was Stryker makes a device that talks to the hospital to relay cardiac information from the patient that's getting from the ambulance to the hospital, so the hospital can know what's going on ahead of time.
Yeah,
that went down. And that was like the first little smoking gun that showed this. And basically what they did was they went in through an employee vulnerability within the Microsoft system that, so like a third-party vendor that Stryker uses, and they went in and just pressed delete. They took down 200,000 servers. This was not a ransomware attack. They weren't asking for money. They just pressed delete and deleted the entire infrastructure within Stryker. So the point being is that it's not like this was being done for money. This wasn't done for some return. This was pure retaliation.
This is legitimate cyber warfare, where they're just attacking a target. Kind of. Let's get a movie in here. How about Alfred in The Dark Knight, where he says some men just want to see the world burn? This is a world burn kind of move.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly, This was I don't know who the kid with a ruby the size of a tangerine is in this case, but definitely not Stryker. They were decimated, and so this is a perfect attack. This is a perfect attack that Iran is doing to cripple healthcare, which in the United States is not doing well enough. It's of course, this is a huge consequential attack. America was attacked on American soil by Iran using the internet. That is the headline here. Yes, it doesn't need an ICBM to cross the atmosphere. They just need to go in, find some moron within a company that clicks on the wrong link, and they go in and press delete. That's what happened here.
So a couple things that occur to me. Number one, as somebody who works on technology every day and I'm surrounded by it, and I got screens and monitors and I got, microphones and soundboards and all this kind of stuff, Stream Deck and all that. And if one of them doesn't work, it derails me. I also know that when my technology would fail me if I was doing emergency medicine, if you're used to leaning on a cardiac monitor that's going to beam telemetry into the emergency room, and you're not used to, manually pushing the button and printing off a strip and bringing that EKG into the physician because you've now been able to transmit it, and now suddenly you got to go back and use something that's a little bit more old school. You can literally have somebody die because you don't have the equipment, or you haven't, you're not conveying the immediacy of the need. You show up and they're not aware that this is like a advanced cardiac problem and they need to start the code and they haven't even got a crash cart or whatever. I mean, there's literally people can die on that. That was part one. So you talk about striking Americans on American soil. The second thing, Skip, that I was thinking of, they didn't have to find this when the war kicked off. This story comes from March 11th. So it's a couple days old. It's about 12 days into the conflict. But it just as easily could have been something they discovered a year ago, and they just sat on as a capability. The same reason they could do that to any person, they could do it to any company, any nation state actor can just bide their time. Like, 2024 hack of Kash Patel. Now we're at war with you. Now let's embarrass you and show your X videos account and let people know what you've been up to in your free time, kind of thing.
100% agree. That's exactly the case, because of course, you work hard in good times so that you can, you have the capabilities in bad times. I mean, that's what they're constantly working on. Of course they are. And just so you know too, like now that we're, this came out a couple of weeks ago, now that we're doing a real post-mortem about what's happening, the thing I wanted to mention was that in the employee bring your own device program that they had, meaning, you bring your own iPhone or whatever, install their software onto it so that you can have your email and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Everybody that had that program at Stryker looked at their phone in that morning, and their phone had been completely erased except for the picture of a barefoot kid with a slingshot, like as an act of defiance.
Yeah.
Like that,
David Goliath.
That's what happened. 200,000 employees, I think, if I'm not mistaken, looked down at their phones and saw that across 79 countries. So yeah, this is armaments that are being accumulated over the years, ready to use when it's no different than the nuclear program, right? Like, if the point is to have, a capability that you have but don't need to use, like this is no different. This isn't getting the press that I think it should, frankly, because it's showing that like they have these capabilities to do strikes. But I think maybe, either between the intertanglement between private companies and the government it's too embarrassing to admit how bad this actually was, and also how bad it actually could be if they continue, if talks fail and the war escalates. These are going to be the ways that we are hit more so, and all the more reason why it's important for people, to be able to protect themselves if they start targeting, not just healthcare, but also like our finances and like, hacking our bank accounts and that sort of thing.
It's also going to have an effect on the stock market. I'm just seeing that they've got the ticker up there with a couple of different companies, Palo Alto Networks and so on. CrowdStrike's familiar. I don't know what Fortinet is. I know what Cloudflare is. And so we had some of those issues earlier. It just says they're attacking major tech firms. Who is this? Do you know anything about Armaden? Is that a company that you're familiar with?
Yeah. They're another tech company. But to your point, Stryker Corp, just in the last month, they've lost 15% of their stock value.
Got it. So that affects a lot of people, not just people who, work in the emergency medicine or people who dealt with the technology. It's like people who have their 401ks or their, individual investment accounts and that thing. They just lost some value there as well.
Think about the implications of that, of Vanguard, of teachers' pensions funds and stuff like that. Just an enormous, if you can lose 15% in one, in 1 month, you hope to get that sort of return over like 2 years or something. If you're close to retirement and you're looking to, cash in on your 401k or your pension that you're vested in from the company that you've worked for 40 years, like these attacks are extremely consequential on whether or not you have money, in your 15th year of retirement, God willing. Of course, this is huge. That's what I'm saying. This is a much bigger story than it's getting. It's not just a hack. This is an act of, this is an attack on the way that we do things in America.
We have an ongoing theme here at the show or the podcast where it occurs to me that we have very unserious people in serious roles. And this is one of those things where, even I'm guilty of it myself. I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, they embarrassed the guy. going back to the Kash Patel story. And then meanwhile, it's like, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. It's just not sexy. It doesn't sell. It's not the same thing as finding out the FBI director has a porn account or something. Correct. So you're not going to see it covered except over on Fox Business. And even that was kind of just like, well, you should be aware. Meanwhile, it doesn't even talk about what the vulnerabilities are, the possible loss to life and all that. And then, of course, like you said, the tertiary effects when you start adding in the financial implications for people's accounts. Yeah. So attack surfaces, and you can't not do business with these companies. Like you can't choose Stryker is being used by your ambulance service in your county right now. Most of you guys don't even know it, but there's only like 3 companies that do it. So they're one of 3.
But this is exactly the point, is that, over the last, 50, 60 years or whatever, there's been a consolidation of firms in each industry, meaning we've moved towards monopolistic competition for a lot of different reasons. And when are these centralized strike points, like when, if you'll recall from a couple years ago, when Abbott Pharmaceuticals, their Michigan plant that made baby formula went down.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it was Enfamil or Similac or whatever what it was. And there were, women crossing the border into Canada to try to find baby formula and stuff. When you make these weak, any device is only as, if this could be your car or whatever, any device is only as strong as its weakest point. And one of the weakest points of any, this is why we have the internet, is that there's not one centralization point that if that were to go down, everything would go down. That has changed, even with the internet. Like when CrowdStrike happened and there was this massive internet outage. When Verizon internet goes down, and it's the news of the day, because like there are consequential networks that rely on this. So as we move towards monopolistic competition and we have these oligopolies, that is to say a handful of companies that are in charge of essential services that are essential to our life, then when they go down or when they are hacked, it makes it much easier to cripple us, and because of that lack of decentralization.
I noticed that here. People who've been listening to the show, you'll see if there's a Cloudflare outage, then we lose some of the capabilities to broadcast, and Amazon Web Services hosts other things. And so there's things I can't do, like I can't pull down clips because some of the technologies I'm relying on are just, they're outside of my control. We're all kind of connected. I guess that's the good and the bad. We're connected, but we're connected. So.
Well, that's the point, is that, yes, we can, it helps in scale, and it helps distribute that service to more people cheaper. However, it's still being held or provided by a private company whose, primary objective is to provide value to their shareholders. And so, they don't have an incentive to make their stuff bulletproof. They have an incentive for the CEO to make decisions that provides a good quarterly report in the next 2 months. So of course, like this is going, there's not as much of an incentive to safeguard. What's incentive does Stryker Corporation have to safeguard against Iranian cyber attacks? Yeah. They weren't thinking about this.
It's always the novel attack too, that you never saw it coming, and that's why it's effective, and they don't try the same thing twice. It's why probably the TSA is a joke, because it's defending against attack that already happened. It's kind of like American military fighting, trying to fight the last war in the next war. We always do the same sort of thing. We train for something we already saw, and the enemy's moved on. Same thing with cyber, I'm sure.
Yes, one man blew up his underwear on Christmas Day and 2000 whatever, and now we all have to like take off our shoes. Yes, of course, of course, that's the case.
Yeah, it's terrible. All right, I think we've checked all the boxes that we did. We had bad news, right? That's our number one priority. Yep,
that's a good one.
That. We did some movie references. We're pretty good at doing that one every time.
Agreed.
The only thing that we haven't hit, you sometimes do a special deal for the folks that are, you're one of our sponsors. So if you want to do a special deal for people that are listening today that are appropriately motivated.
let me put on my remember that I'm a business owner hoodie and take off my,
hold on. I think I have a different hoodie. You want to do that one?
Yeah, let's throw that one on, because you never know. Let's
mix it up.
Exit cybersecurity expert mode and remember what we're doing. Yes, in lieu of, to be clear, I'm co-founder of Patriot Protect, which we do a lot to protect people and reduce their attack surfaces. Since we're such swell fellas, we'll make the promo code Kyle worth double what it usually is to make sure that people are protected from all of these, cyber attacks that are going on for the next, call it 72 hours. We'll make it worth 30% off.
Yeah, so that should take us through either end of the week or close to it, something like that. So, all right, folks, if you guys want to do that, then by all means. Otherwise, always fun talking to Skip because he makes me laugh, and he's got as many. He's ahead of me on the movie references, which basically there's like two people that I talk to, and one is Steve Friend and one is Skip Holt. So, I appreciate it.
The least I could do. It's Jurassic Park references and cybersecurity is really in my wheelhouse.
It's good stuff. Thanks for jumping on the program. I appreciate it, buddy.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next time. So there you go. That's kind of fun. I don't know. I get a kick out of Skip. I like talking to people that are smart. I like talking about people. Like, I don't have a problem with outsourcing our democracy and having people like Skip vote because he's intelligent and he pays attention. It's the other people that make me worried. We did a little play on Kash Patel. I'm going to cover a little bit more of it because it was the second thing that I found on Twitter, kind of in the deep recesses. Another reason why democracy is fading in its glory to me with my 5+ hours a day. Before we get there, folks, if you're watching on Rumble, YouTube, give us a like. Appreciate that. Subscribe to the channels. We're nearly at 20,000 on YouTube. That's kind of cool. Just an organic growth path. We've had some kind of bumps on the road, but you guys are great. Also, if you're watching on Locals, thanks for being there. If the supporters there, I missed our call-in show. I actually missed it. I do like hearing from you guys. I was thinking like maybe I need to do an extra one. We'll just do it on Thursday, but on Thursdays we do a call-in show where you guys get to share what's going on with me and your lives, and you get to tell me whether you think democracy works or not or whatever else. We have some really bright callers and people sharing information that I've never thought of before, reinforcing positions I already believe in or challenging ones that I have. I think it's awesome. So all of that. And if you're watching on Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com will get you there, or go to the Spotify app and search for the Kyle Seraphin Show. All those would be great. You can sign up in more than one place, and I'd appreciate it if you did, because sometimes we have issues and you never know what those might be. As Skip pointed out, there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. So sometimes you might get the cleanest version over on the Spotify update, and they host our program. And I've yet to had many programs with the hosting. So you may hear an ad from them right now, and we're going to continue on, and do the story. This story popped up out of a Twitter post of someone, I don't know who the hell it was, actually. I can't remember who it was, but this is a group called the Campaign Legal Center. Speaking about things that you're just holding on to for a rainy day, kind of like the Iranians did with the Stryker hack, most likely. CLC calls for an inquiry into the multiple trips by the FBI Director Kash Patel. This is an advocacy group. They are advancing democracy through law. Do you guys think they're on my team? Advancing democracy through law. Sounds like communism to me, honest to God. But occasionally we have these strange bedfellows where people that maybe we don't agree with politically are doing things for a different reason. This is the reason why I like Tom Massey, why people that are mad at Tom Massey don't seem to understand. If you were to expand out, you'd see Tom Massey disagrees with what Republicans are about, same way I do. The difference is he's further to the right than the Republicans. He's more interested in privacy than Republicans. He's willing to call out warrantless spying. We can find a moment where we agree with our enemies for very different reasons, but the same course of action is required, especially when it's a yes or a no vote. In this case, I'd like to see misconduct held in account. I'd like to see Kash Patel deal with the fact that he came and told us all that he was going to go and fix weaponization, and he turned around and did the opposite. He's going to target Eric Swalwell, ineffectively, by the way. I'd like to see him deal with his government plane use, which he called out on the previous FBI director. And it's very personal to me because I was a whistleblower to Josh Hawley's office about Chris Wray's jet use, only to find out that the guy who gave me the number, the person that put me in touch with Josh Hawley, is in fact now abusing the same jet that we were calling out. It's really frustrating. Kash just went to a trip in Chicago to play hockey, and we just saw that on Twitter. And the Boston field office and the Chicago field office said, oh, it's so great to host Kash Patel for this hockey game. They set up some bullshit meetings. Excuse my language, but they set up some BS meetings to justify him going out to Chicago to play freaking hockey poorly, by the way. If you guys listen to this program, we did an interview a while ago with Richie McGinnis. Maybe one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. It's rare that I interview someone that I'm not sure. It's actually not. I actually interview people all the time that I'm like, I'm not sure if this is going to be a good interview. And then I'm like, wow, I really like these people. People as a group are dumb, retarded, horrible, lowest common denominator, low IQ. But a person can be very bright individually. And I always find that. And this is why the quote unquote democracy, the more people, the lower the average IQ, right? Same deal. When I deal with one person one-on-one, especially Richie McGinnis. I always think back. I need to have him back on again, see what he thinks about what's going on today. Just a really bright guy, a guy that, I knew he was a riot chaser. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to be kind of like a bonehead to do that. And then you're like, no, he's a bonehead like me, except more advanced. And he speaks Arabic, and he has this wild grasp of Middle Eastern politics because he worked for Al Jazeera Arabic. He said Kash Patel is the least capable player in the hockey league that he plays in. And yet Kash is also probably one of the most liked players by his team. That's a really balanced position. You can be really likable and awful at something. You can also be someone who gets hacked. People find out that you have a porn account that you're still using actively while you're the FBI director. I mean, look, people can have porn accounts, I guess. I don't know why you need one. I don't know why anybody has that. I don't know why he has an account to be able to go to this website. And the fact that it was currently being used on that day is pretty dark. This is the Spider Cash account that was gone. Again, go on social media. You lose your faith in humanity and democracy. One of the things that happens every single time that goes down, though, without fail, if there is a moment of bad press for Kash Patel, then you 100% can expect that the FBI is going to come out and tell you about terrorism. Now, usually it's a new terrorism where they let you know. And I wanted to cover this. We're going to cover the just a brief touch on a story about Tyler Robinson, the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk. We're going to hit that real quickly. We'll kind of wrap up. I needed to touch this because this was that day where two different terror attacks took place, right? One was in Virginia. There was a man that was shot at an American university, Old Dominion. And the other was a guy drove into a synagogue. And isn't it interesting that today, 2 days after the this actually was from yesterday, now that I look at it. So yesterday, one day after the cyber leak of Kash Patel's stuff in the weekend, and then we go into the first day of the week, Monday, we find out that the Michigan synagogue attacker committed Hezbollah-inspired acts of terrorism. I want you to pay attention to the fun language that this woman is using. Now, as I'm looking at this, it appears that the woman who is standing there is Jennifer Runyon. She has red hair. She is the special agent in charge of the Detroit field office, per the caption here. And I can 100% tell you that she is not the best person to lead that field office because there is not a single woman who's the best person to lead any field office. I just know that because I was an FBI agent and I worked with women. That's not me being a jerk. I'm just saying there was a man that could have done her job better. And I have no idea why she's in charge, except that Kash Patel didn't root out all the people. We can go back. I don't even have to look at it. I'll go look at her advancement history, and I guarantee you she was promoted multiple times under Ray. It's just how they work. In any case, she's willing to say the things that need to be said, which is very specific. We now have not just we don't have a Hezbollah attack. It's a Hezbollah inspired attack. We're going to craft the language. He wasn't reading Hezbollah websites. He was reading Hezbollah friendly news sites. Watch how fun they play with this language here. And you can always tell they just freaking lie to you. They just lie to you and they make it sound academic. This is the danger of having an intelligence agency that's supposed to be doing law enforcement. They're meeting their own agendas here.
Based on the evidence gathered to date, we assess this attack to be a Hezbollah-inspired act of terrorism, purposely targeting the Jewish community and the largest Jewish temple in Michigan. The FBI defines terrorism as a violent criminal act by an individual who is inspired by or associated with a designated foreign terrorist organization.
Inspired by or associated with is a very, very broad brush to paint with.
We do not make this characterization lightly without a thorough review and keen evaluation of the facts.
Let's go ahead and do a quick translation of that as well. We had an agenda to get to, and we decided that we would get there before we started, and we were able to get there with this nebulous, nonsensical, predetermined outcome.
In this case, the evidence shows the attacker was motivated and inspired by Hezbollah's militant ideology.
That's it. It was a militant ideology because he went to Hezbollah positive news sources. I thought we were getting rid of some of this stuff. Do you know how I know we're not winning? Because of this. You're seeing NPR talking about how Trump's Equal Opportunity Employment Commission is attacking DEI and emphasizing white people. And there's a backswing on it. And who's in charge of it? It's a lady. I'm just going to leave it right there. That's it. In late February, Andrea Lucas sent a letter to the leaders of Fortune 500 companies. The Trump-appointed chair of the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission framed it as a friendly reminder where she stood on a hot-button issue, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. She directed the CEOs and general counsels on the board to guidance that she'd issued last year, warning that a company's DEI policies or practices may be illegal if they lead to employment decisions based on, even just in part, a person's race, sex, or other protected characteristics. EEO stands ready to combat such discrimination, she wrote. We're the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, not the Equitable Employment Outcomes Commission. Well, that's really clever, and that's a really good buzzword. I know she's not conservative because she's running the EEOC, and she's a lady. The end. Call me a throwback, and I think I probably am. I'm okay with that. I just know that there was someone that could do that job better, and it wasn't her. I just know it. You know how I know it? Because in a competitive position, this is something that I heard, I think Andrew Klavan discussed one time. I got an Andrew Klavan clip talking about Tucker Carlson. He seems to have really fallen off his thinking of late, which is sad. But he said, the minute that you see that women are the most competitive in any field outside of like being a mom, the minute that you see that women are the most competitive, I just want you to think about this for a minute. When women are the top competitors, it tells you that men have moved on and are no longer competing in that field. The best men are not. I can never shake that because I can't think of a contrary argument. Is there a place where men are actively and aggressively attempting to win that women beat them at, outside of things that are uniquely motherly? I'll give you the worst example. The worst example is men, per people on the political left, are actually the best at being women and being victimized as women as they go out there and pretend to be women. That's how jacked up we are right now as a country. Luckily, we have strong defenders of the Republic. We've got women that are going out and will defend women, right? This is Kat Comack, whatever her name is, Congresswoman. Nothing like seeing this woman defend athletes at CPAC. I'm going to do a couple of quick little CPAC clips. I'm sure I have this here. Oh, this is not a very nice name for the clip. This is a very short clip. It's a Congresswoman from Florida letting you know about keeping men out of women's locker rooms. It doesn't appear, I'm not trying to be mean, but it does not appear that this woman has been in a female locker room, even at Planet Fitness, in a very, very long time.
As we turn into these midterms, we're going to need to adopt some of the amazing things that Florida and Texas have done. And it starts with not being afraid. I know people in this room are here because you're patriotic, because you're not afraid. But let me tell you what, my good friend, Senator Ted Cruz, he just left the stage. Give it up for Senator Cruz.
All right, let's give it up for Senator Cruz. What did he say? He said a thing that it's almost impossible to believe. It's so out of touch. It's the reason why I don't believe in democracy, why I don't think that it's the solution. Because we end up with people like Ted Cruz, who went there on a Tea Party mandate, and his claim is, it used to be that the Democrat Party represented the working class in America, and now the Republicans represent the working class in America. And I will make the argument to you that no one is representing regular people in America, to include workers, people with calluses on their hands, people that do manual labor, people that do the things that keep America moving, picking up trash, plumbing, designing and maintaining, building, construction, like you name it, road work. There's not a party that actually represents regular people. And this is my point about the bacon cheeseburger nationalism. I can go out and find regular people and get them on board with this. And I have the audacity to tell you that if you tell me, well, I have a dietary restriction that keeps me from eating bacon, that's fine. You're just not in my party. I'm okay with excluding you. The woman who deleted her account that I referenced at the beginning of the show on social media, which is also funny, her first move as a self-described conservative was to tell me that I was being a misogynist. I said, in a different situation, if you were actually conservative, I would ask to talk to your husband. I'd say, put your husband on the phone, which is my ongoing joke on social media. I'm not nice on social media. And she said, you're just a mean old misogynist. I'm like, that's your feminism talking, because all of you Women who are probably over the age of 35, you all got programmed with it. You all got hit with feminism. And as much as you want to fight against it, it's actually in your core programming. It's in my wife's core programming. My wife, who wears a veil to church and is homeschooling 4 children downstairs, and who associates her success in life with being able to solve problems in our household, which is her job. That's what she's tasked with. And she's great at it. And I'm eternally grateful for the work she does. You guys will... Anybody who's met me will know that I constantly compliment my wife, and 2, I'm always thankful for what she does. I really am, like deeply. She does things that I cannot do. We're complementary in that way, in a very biblical sense. But it's so funny to me. The first instinct is to go back and call somebody a misogynist. You're sexist. You're bigoted. You're this mean thing. The right and the left are the same. Politically, the parties that align with those things. They're not representing me. And I don't know if they represent you, but Ted Cruz thinks they do. And you guys tell me, it just seems like a pretty lackluster, uninformed, out of touch piece that they're pushing. And so, of course, people that see more and more of this stuff every day think, 1, we're not going to vote our way out of it. And 2, more importantly, democracy may not be the right answer, because we get guys like this and they become in love with their own statements, and they fall out of favor with the simple thing, which is that we're not solving any problems. We voted in a guy with no new wars, and all he's done is start a new war and punch gas prices up to $4 a gallon.
And if you want an object lesson on what a strong commander-in-chief looks like, take a look at the current resident of the Oval Office, President Donald J. Trump. Today, we have a greater chance that in the next 6 months we will see a new government in Venezuela, in Cuba, and in Iran.
Go away, neocons. This Zionist, protect other countries at all costs. There's nothing America first about it. There's nothing America only about it. There's nothing bacon cheeseburger nationalist about it. We've gotten to the point where people who disagree with us, they're obviously all leftists. This is what I experience. This is why I have a problem. Like women, this is a very feminine sort of thing. It really is. It's a feminine argument to say everyone who disagrees with me is meh. It's emotional. It's not fact-based. That's why, like, if you say that, I won't engage with you on social. I just think you're stupid, and you're proving it. Same story. Laura Trump does this. Laura Trump, who married into the Trump family, by the way. Laura Trump decides to impugn the honor, decides to go after, quote-unquote, woke generals. You must be on the political left. You must not know what you're talking about. I'm going to go to Laura Trump's bio real quick here. Let's just do that as we before I play this clip. Laura Trump used to be called Yuneska, born in 1982. She's my wife's age, I guess. Political figure. She's the former co-chair of the Republican National Committee. She's married to Eric Trump, third child of Donald Trump, was the producer and the host of Trump Productions and a producer of Inside Edition. She has a new show on Fox called My View with Laura Trump. I can think of nothing I would care less about. She was born in North Carolina. I'm just trying to find out, like, what are her credentials to talk about the military? She was a story coordinator and producer for Inside Edition from 2012 to 2016. She was a Fox News contributor. Then it got rid of her in 2022. Then they hired her back because of Trump's reelection bid, and they realized that Trump was going to win. Let's see. She was part of the Women's Empowerment Tour. Sounds very left. Oh, she was a liaison for Guile Parscale's company. More on that in just 1 second. That guy is a massive lobbyist for Israel, for whatever it's worth. She was described, the German chancellor, as the downfall of Germany, worst things ever happen. Okay. She was a senior consultant to Parscale for the re-election campaign in 2020. Paid her $180,000 a year. More on that in a second with the money thing. She's a surrogate on the stump. She took broad advisory roles. I don't see anything in the military. Senate campaign she thought about. Co-chair, Republican, Fox News. Music career. Released a cover of Tom Petty, which was basically unlistenable. She began creating music, and she had a third single entitled Hero. The negative critical reception focused on her vocals, which are awful, and the autotune usage because she can't sing. Okay, so yeah, so Laura Trump can't sing, no military, gross. All gross. Now she's going to call out generals because we listen to women who have had more surgeries on their face and apparently are, what is it? She's a pop music sensation, the chat is saying. She's a pop music creation. She's going to tell you about military people not being patriotic, not knowing what it's like to serve after they serve for like 20 or 30 years.
You know, these men and women, Laura, have put their lives aside. They've pledged an oath to protect the United States against enemies, both foreign and domestic. They are fighting for freedom. They are fighting against oppression and tyranny. Of course, this individual has no idea what that means. And he's obviously insulted
he's a
every
former
single
military
member
officer.
of our United
Laura,
States
he's a military.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
he's
crazy.
a military officer. He does.
Laura,
presumably,
you sound like a retard.
He does know what it means. But he's still called, under Pete Hegseth and President Trump, basically a Gestapo.
I enjoy that both of these women, if you guys are just listening, you can't see. We've got Laura Ingraham on there, and we've got Laura Trump, and the Lauras are both wearing the Mar-a-Lago face, which is a shitload of Botox and a bunch of sort of like chiseling and maybe some Ozempic. Yucky. And they look almost the same, by the way. You could basically age one of those photos into the other photo. This is what Fox News hires. This is why FBI Barbie works there. Also useless. No particular information. Doesn't even realize what she's talking about. Laura Ingraham tries to save her and say, hey, by the way, you're talking about a general. And then they're like, yeah, but a general. What do they know about service? We know about service because I covered Tom Petty at Mar-a-Lago.
That's basically what he's saying. That's how far the left has sunk.
Their level of Trump derangement syndrome knows no bounds. They can't help themselves. And when they can see very clearly that these men and women are doing their duty to our country and they're serving all of us so well, that's what you get from these people on the left. But probably we should expect nothing less.
Laura, low IQ, as your father-in-law would say. I don't know. Major General, I don't.
Major General, low IQ, a lot of like what we call ad hominems. No particular destruction of the evidence, nothing that they're going to do to try to combat the argument. This is what you're getting. This is why people who get 1 hour a day, that's the news. That says it's set. Laura Ingraham said it, and I agree with Laura Ingraham. Whatever Laura Ingraham says is good for me because whatever Laura Ingraham says is already agreed to by the Trump administration. It's gross. It's not good. It comes from this guy, in part. Who's this? That's Brad Parscale, or Parscale. I don't know how it's a top aide. Donald Trump's first two campaigns. He's registered as a foreign agent to work on behalf of Israel, create digital media to combat anti-Semitism. This story is not new. This story is from 2025. And how interesting this story, which comes from, let me see the date that it was written, the 30th of September, 2025 in Axios. It says, why does it matter? Well, because he also had something to do with Turning Point, and I read a really interesting thread the other day, and we should talk about it. Brad Parscale, who paid Laura Trump, created that thing, has decided to register as a foreign agent. This is going into September. Why does it matter? It matters because Israel was hemorrhaging support among Democrats for years and starting to see similar trends in Republicans, especially younger voters. A new poll from the New York Times, Siena College, found that the majority of Americans now oppose sending additional economic and military aid to Israel. A dramatic reversal since the October 7th terrorist attack, are reversing the trend that is vital for Israel, which relies on bipartisan diplomatic support from the United States in addition to billions of dollars in aid each year. I'm not someone who's so simple-minded as to think that a foreign nation controls everything that goes on in America. I think that's ridiculously silly. I think it's super, super narrow-focused. But we should be able to agree that a tiny nation in the Middle East has a massively outsized influence in things that go on in the United States, and they are dependent on our work because if the United States is not involved in the conflict over in Iran, there is no Israel. And they needed us to be there. This is like the younger brother picking a fight with a bully knowing that his older brother is Jack Reacher. That's what it looks like to me. Parscale began working for the Israeli government September 18th, according to the paperwork he filed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, that's FARA. He registered a company called Clockwork X LLC, which is working with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His contract states he will provide, quote, strategic communications planning and media services to develop and execute a nationwide campaign in the United States to combat anti-Semitism, which by that they mean the conflation of, and the very lazy conflation of, anti-Semitism is the same thing as being anti-Israeli government being involved in our United States, which is tough. At least 80% of the content will be tailored towards Gen Z audiences across platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and other relevant digital broadcasts. They are trying to stop the 40% of people that watch too much, read too much, understand too much, and go, you know what? This is a little bit too much, isn't it? The noticing people, the people who keep noticing. The paid media campaign is aimed to reach at least 50 million digital impressions per month. Clockwork Tower will stand up websites and deliver content, delivering GPT framing and results of GPT conversations to create new digital AI models to train on. They will integrate narrative messaging with Salem Media Network, a conservative radio news network. You know who was on there? People like Seb Gorka, Brandon Tatum, etc. Even though it wasn't immediately clear what that communications would look like. The contract is worth $6 million. All right. So let's go to X. This is with that social media that radicalizes people, apparently, and makes you not like democracy. This is coming from Dankster Intel, or Dankster Intel. Did you know that the Charlie Kirk Show, the Josh Hammer, Dennis Prager, Laura Trump, Larry Elder, Hugh Hewitt, Dinesh D'Souza, Sebastian Gorka, Brandon Tatum, and Todd Starnes all broadcast on a network whose chief strategy officer is a federally registered foreign agent of the Israeli government? This is not an allegation. This is not a theory. The Foreign Agent Registration Act registration number is 7649, filed with DOJ. Public record. Go look at it. FARA.com. I'm sorry, FARA.gov. FARA.gov. On the screen. I'm reading the tweet. And that seems to be correct. I'll show it to you in a second here. This is what they don't want you to connect. So he goes on. He said Brad Parscale holds two titles simultaneously. One, he is the chief strategy officer for the Salem Media Group, which is the largest Christian conservative radio network in America. And number two, he is a principal at Clock Tower X, LLC, which is a registered foreign agent with a $6 million contract to the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs via Havas Media Group in Germany. The filing started off at $6 million. It's now up to $9 million. They grabbed another $3 million after they filed in this FARA. The FARA states that the Israeli government is trying to integrate into Salem Media News Salem Media News Network properties. Salem does not disclose it. They don't say that they have anything on there. That's possibly a federal crime. This guy's pointing out under 22 USC. We'll see. Probably not. He says it's statute. That's not the way it usually works out because the people who are involved in these things don't tend to do it. So the next time the Charlie Kirk show tells you what to think about Israel, or Josh Hammer tries to frame the narrative in the Iran war, or Dennis Prager explains to you about Judeo-Christian values, you have to ask yourself, who's pushing the agenda? And here's the agenda right here. There it is. This is the FARA website, received on September 18th, 2025. Ain't that something? Registration number 7649. You guys are welcome to go fact check it yourself. Primary business address is in Medina, Ohio, and there's the person responsible, which is actually, I'll slide down here. You can see it is highlighted right there on the screen, Bradley Parscale. So there you go. It makes you wonder things. It makes these stories a little bit more problematic. It doesn't mean that you didn't have this guy who's on the screen, Tyler Robinson, actually pull the trigger. This is actually, I think, a misnomer. I'm going to go do some deep dive. I'm going to read more on the legal filing. A lot of people jumped on this right away yesterday. The lawyers that are trying to put up a good defense, that is their right. That's their job as defense attorneys. The lawyers for Tyler Robinson have basically claimed that the bullet fragment doesn't match the rifle. And what they've said is that they're unable to match it because of the tactics, techniques, and because the rifle, after firing the bullet was not retained. The mass is destroyed, and so it's difficult to match it. So they're saying they don't agree with the way that they tried to match it to the rifle. It doesn't mean that it was a different caliber or something else. So we'll dig into that. But this was a big headline. And the headline is, I think, you no longer have the voice of Charlie Kirk saying the things of Charlie Kirk. You now have the voice of people who are not Charlie Kirk using the name of Charlie Kirk. And it turns out the people that are doing the programming there are being paid by Israel. That's a wild move. And it's documented in the government registry. Attorneys for the man who's accused of fatally shooting Charlie Kirk last September want a delay in the court hearing for 6 months to review the evidence related to DNA found on the alleged murder weapon. Tyler Robinson's legal team asked Judge Tony Graff in Utah to delay a preliminary hearing scheduled for May. By the way, the preliminary hearing, folks, is when they decide whether or not there's even probable cause for this charge. We are so far away from anything resembling people having the information out there. The hearing will essentially be a mini trial of the man who's accused of, that's not exactly correct. What they do is they evaluate whether or not there's probable cause to believe that this person committed the crime so they can go forward with the prosecution or not. And whether or not the information, which is not an indictment, which was not agreed to by a grand jury, whether that actually goes forward. And we're kicking it back. This is almost a year after the event that took place, Utah Valley University, September 10th of 2025. One of the biggest pieces of evidence they're waiting on is DNA evidence related to the firearm allegedly used in the attack. The investigators found a decades-old German bolt-action rifle. It's a Mauser variant, built for World War II or World War I, hanging out in a wooded area. And then they go on to describe who Kirk is. They talk about an ATF summary report indicates the ATF was unable to identify the bullet recovered at autopsy to the bullet allegedly tied to their client. They have to make this tie. I'm going to reserve judgment. Again, they didn't say that it doesn't match. They said the ATF was unable to match it based on the condition of the bullet from everything I've read so far. We'll do a direct quote from the filing. Until the defense receives the case files and protocols relating to these analyses and has them independently evaluated by its own expert, they will not be in a position to assess the reliability of this evidence if either the state or the defense decides to proffer it. So again, it is being misrepresented by a lot of people. What I do see is that you've got a major propaganda push underway, and the American people aren't buying it. I'm going to share two evidence of it. One of them was the Laura Trump thing, talking about everybody's a leftist if you don't agree with me. If you don't jump on board, if you're not Jesse Waters playing rock music and excited about an invasion that's obviously going to cost a lot of American lives, then you're not American. The second thing is maybe a little bit more troubling, which is that Americans aren't buying it. If you try to have twice the sex with half the foreplay, what you get is people who are not ready for it and they don't really like it. It feels a little bit more, sexual assault-ish, doesn't it? Here's Marco Rubio. Well, here's what I want you to do with this clip. He's talking about Iran, and he's saying, wouldn't it be nice if Iran didn't spend money on military equipment and weapons? Wouldn't it be nice if they spent it on their own populations? That's all we're asking. The United States is now asking for $200 billion from you and from me as we write our taxes and we send off our check. They're asking for $200 billion to fight a war that we voluntarily jumped into. I just want you to put the shoe on the other foot. And then I'm going to show you how badly it's working. And then I'm going to show you that they're trying to prop up Marco Rubio as the likely candidate for 2028 because Republicans are trying to say, look, this whole thing is already over. They've almost basically ceded the midterms. They don't even want to talk about it. They want to talk about the next presidential election to try to do more of the same garbage. Marco Rubio telling you, wouldn't it be nice if we spent money on infrastructure and domestically instead of war? This is a very, very funny moment if you hold the mirror up.
And at the end of the day, I think that if there are people in Iran who now, given everything that's happened, are willing to move in a different direction for their country, that would be great. Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country. So we are always hopeful that that would exist over there.
Oops.
Costs. Take a look here. Take a look at Donald Trump's overall net approval rating. This is the lowest of his term, the lowest of his second term. We're talking about minus 17 points, 17 points underwater. And unlike in Donald Trump's first term, in which he was negative basically throughout his entire term, Trump actually started off in positive territory here in his second term. But now he's at the lowest point of his second term. But there's an even bigger comparison to be made, okay? So obviously Trump was elected once back in 2016, then he took a 4-year break, and then, of course, he's serving his second term, and it's his second presidency. So I went back and I looked at all of the presidents at this point in a presidency, all of them at this point in a presidency, and guess what? Donald Trump is the lowest ever at this point in a presidency, lower than Joe Biden, lower than Jimmy Carter, lower than Ronald Reagan. He's lower than all of them at this point in a presidency. You know, you can make any sort of swimming comparison you want. Maybe you want to make a comparison with a diver like Greg Louganis. Maybe you want to make a swimming comparison, Michael Phelps. Maybe if you're me, like an old Jewish soul, you want to make a comparison with Mark Spitz. Either way, he is very much.
I like Mark Spitz too. That would be my comparison. I don't know what boat that puts me in. All I know is when you look at the numbers and the way that people wanted the domestic agenda focused on, oh, wait, the thing that we talk about here, Agenda 47, these are almost exclusively domestic, except for the part that we didn't want to get involved in a foreign war and we didn't want to see $4 a gallon gasoline. It makes people not feel like democracy is the answer. It naturally will move people out of that space. It has to, because people thought they outsourced the revolution. They thought they gave it to Donald Trump because Donald Trump had all the answers, and all the answers were right here on the screen in front of you. This is Agenda 47 and the weaponization of government. Fix the fraud. Cut the costs. Do the Doge. These are not my promises. No more wars. Those are Donald Trump promises. It's not a doomer to point out that somebody said one thing, didn't change their mind, never told you that you should expect something different, and then showed up and were really handsy about going overseas and getting gross about it. Oh, look, there's a war boner right there. By the way, apparently Lindsey Graham was spending time at Disney carrying a bubble wand as a single boomer man, childless. He's apparently a Disney adult. I don't know if this is something that Lindsey Graham regularly does where he goes to Disneyland, or if this is some sort of like Israeli humiliation ritual where he has to go do this so they can see what a creep he is. But something about having a war boner, talking about men parachuting off, C-130s, dropping into combat zones that get him super excited. He wants to move all of our stuff to Israel. And then he's wandering around. Yuck. Super gross. This is published by TMZ. I think it's actually news relevant and real. It's something we should all be aware of. Like, what a creeper. I actually have a funny little video about Disney in just a second as well that came off Tucker. Let me go back to the idea that we are not even seeing this administration get serious about almost anything. And here's maybe one of the most damning pieces of it. This is a story that came out of the AP. This story was updated a couple of days ago. There was a anti-fraud task force. Let me get the actual name for you. Let me scroll down to it. Let me see here. Let me see if they actually name it. I have it in AI over here, I think. It's called the Task Force to Eliminate Fraud. I'm giving away sort of the story. If you guys are watching right now, you're already getting ahead of it. Okay. So AP reports that J.D. Vance holds the first meeting with that. The White House has put out a hype video about this anti-fraud task force. Are you ready? J.D. Vance telling you about how we're going to stop the fraud. Does anyone actually believe all this stuff? Wouldn't this be the number one thing you would have started right away? Isn't this like with the Doge priority one? Nah. And I'm going to tell you how I know they're not serious in 1 second.
The president put us really from day one of the Trump administration who said, we have to take the fraud issue seriously. We think fraud has been a problem for a long time. It became a massive, massive problem under the Biden administration. What we're going to actually do is force the bureaucracy to take this seriously and work together as political principles to make sure that we stop allowing fraudsters to steal the American people's money. This is not just theft of the American people's money. This is also theft of critical services that the American people rely on.
The people at this table are all united in absolute determination to stop this plague of fraud, criminality, and abuse.
It has to stop. The President of the United States has ordered us to stop it, and that's what this task force is going to do.
Nice. Nice. Look at those pretty graphics and words and the hopeful music. We're going to get fraud. J.D. Vance is going to have his wife launch a podcast so she's accessible, and he's going to go out there and talk about how we're going to focus on the priorities. By the way, that's a domestic priority. Do you know I know they're not serious about fraud? Because the FBI director is not a member of that task force. He's not in the leadership. You got J.D. Vance. You've got Andrew Ferguson, who's the chairman of the FTC. You've got Stephen Miller, who finds himself everywhere. Stephen Miller is going to stick around for a while, isn't he? You've got a former U.S. attorney as the executive director. The FBI is a key partner in the task force operations, but Kash Patel is actually not involved in the leadership of a fraud task force, which is exactly the thing that the FBI is actually meant to do. If the FBI was doing the real business of the FBI, they would focus on long-term investigations that are complex financial scams against the American people to the tune of billions, maybe trillions of dollars a year. If we spent $11 billion a year on an FBI that wasn't worried about stupid things they can't prevent, like a terrorist who they decided to say is part of Hezbollah, even though he's not, who was motivated because some family members of his were killed. If we were serious and we were like, hey, we're done spying on Americans, we're just going to stop things, we're going to protect the American people from force, like organized crime, and fraud, like people who steal from the public coffers and get away from it. Nope, we're not going to do that. And Kash Patel isn't part of that anti-fraud piece. So it's my bet that they're going to point out to you. They're going to point out to you over and over again that you're anti-Semitic if you disagree with the conflict that's going on right now. That if you think that Donald Trump saying no new wars actually meant no new wars, that's your problem. That's a you problem because you're a bigot, which again, it doesn't work on you. It doesn't work on me. It doesn't work. They wore that out. The left wore it out. The right can't try it on and actually use it against any of us. That tactic is done. That moment is over. Doesn't mean they're not going to try it. And then they're going to pump up Marco Rubio. Because as best JD Vance is trying, I would suggest to you that the alternative is the establishment is pushing Marco Rubio. And I'm going to get the most established person, Mr. Limited Hangout himself. Limited hanging out with Sean Hannity, his new podcast. He's doing a podcast tour to pump up his own podcasts because Fox News is super authentic. They're just regular dudes just chilling with access to the PBD podcast, and they're totally not just parroting the line that everybody would expect them to parrot. Here they are talking about, anti-Semitism, which is apparently the biggest problem in America, despite the fact that Jews as a voting bloc in America represent 2% of Americans. You know, not bacon cheeseburger nationalists. Doesn't mean they should be hated. I'm just saying they don't represent a big enough thing to get this much airtime on this concept, which is like people telling me that I'm Islamophobic too. No, I just eat bacon, so none of you assholes are part of my group. Sorry, excuse my language.
Let me ask you this specific question, because this infuriates me. We've been witnessing the rise of anti-Semitism worldwide. Mm-hmm. We see it in the halls of Congress. We see it on college campuses. We see it in the podcast space. And it's loud, and it gets louder. Here's my question for anybody that is angry. For example, all these people that were protesting, Gaza and what happens, to the people in Gaza. Excuse me, they're the ones that voted in Hamas in the first place. Yep. But here's my point. Israel has a population of under 10 million people. What do we have? 365 million Americans, around that of our population. So extrapolate out their population versus ours.
That's not how this works, by the way, Sean Hannity. Now he's going to try and tell us it's the equivalent of, by the way, this is a Bibi Netanyahu talking point, that the equivalent impact on Israel for October 7th is tens of thousands of lives compared to the 3,000 we lost on 9/11. That's pretty gross. Also, Israel is a security state, which has some of the most aggressive and advanced tactics, has some of the most aggressive and advanced surveillance anywhere, and we're supposed to believe they missed it. I'm going to just go on record and tell you that my belief is that the October 7th was allowed to accomplish an agenda. But here he goes. He's going to say something that is literally years old now, and we're going to try to push this narrative on you guys. This is Sean Hannity, definitely not taking talking points from someone, certainly not a foreign agent. What he should have said is that there's only like a couple million people that are Jewish in America. There's only 10 million Jews that are in Israel. And so they don't represent a big enough constituency, both in the world or in the United States, to get the amount of airtime that they get. Or you could do what he does here.
Compare it to October 7th. That's the equivalent of over 40,000 dead Americans in a day. For all those people that said, Israel shouldn't fight back, what would you want America to do?
For all of those people who said Israel shouldn't fight back, what should you want America to do? Not do anything. I would want America to not deal with American, non-American problems. There's all kinds of injustice in this world. I don't feel compelled to be part of any of it, it turns out. That's the bacon cheeseburger nationalist position. It's not isolationism. We do have interests. I just don't know what my interest is in that. Israel's got it covered. They went and leveled Gaza. And you're not going to hear me crying tons about it either, because it's like, it's not my fight. Either way, those people have been picking fights with each other for decades. Since they've been there. Gross. All of it. Not my problem. We got bigger problems. We're spending billions now to go fight that war, which looks like it's coming from not America. And we got vets that are homeless on the streets. How about we deal with them? That'd be okay. I thought that's what Donald Trump said. Anyway, Marco Rubio is definitely the right choice.
I have to find out where your heads are at.
I have the answer. I already have the answer.
What is it?
It's already written. It's already done.
What?
You said that midterms are going to be the most consequential.
Most consequential in our lifetime.
I don't know. We're about to find out. But this is going to be the first election in 2028 where Trump's not on the ballot.
Correct.
Okay. I think the foreign wars are going to be kind of messy, but done by then. There's no way Trump's going to leave the world.
It's going to be done before this election.
They say it's the economy, stupid. What's the number one, the biggest voting bloc in America outside of white people, Latinos.
Oh, I thought you was
Latinos.
I know where you're going.
I firmly believe, and I'm coming out way in front on this, that the president of the United States, when all is said and done in 2028, is going to be Marco Rubio, and I'll tell you why. Much like J.D. Vance 10 years ago, Rubio ran for president. He wasn't ready. He ran into a buzzsaw named Trump. Trump had the cachet, he had the marketing, he had the ability.
Trump had the this, he had the that. Okay, so this guy, that's the only Jewish member of that panel as far as I could tell, and he's saying his piece, and apparently the official position from Hannity and from that guy is that Marco Rubio, who represents the biggest voting bloc because a Cuban person somehow has something to do with Mexican people. All I know is Hispanics tend to be Catholic, like me. And there is no Christian Zionism that is being preached in my church. In fact, I'm tempted to share this with you. I think I will now. Give me a moment. I'm going to read this to you, and then we'll wrap up. Allow me to read this thing. I took a picture from our lectionary at church on Sunday. I've never seen a prayer like this before. There's a thing called the prayers of the faithful. It's where they get up and they say the intentions of those who are gathered, and they do a mass prayer. And so the first one was for the whole church, uniting in one heart, raising our voices to escort the Savior with palms. It was Palm Sunday. Number 2, for individuals, groups, and nations who, like Jesus, have been cruelly betrayed by a false gesture of peace, that the greedy betrayers may come to repentance and the true peace will be restored through the Master's redemption. I have never heard a prayer like that. Not ever. In all the time that I've gone to a Catholic church, I've never heard that sort of overtly political sort of statement. And that goes along with what the Pope just said about those who pray for success in war. It's kind of an ugly moment. I'm going to actually play you that because that actually comes from the White House press secretary and her response. See, we're asked this question. We are seeing like a mind job trying to tell us that we should move on from the midterms and already start mentally electing Marco Rubio. Sorry, that's not going to fly. I'm going to tell you, he thinks it's going to be Marco Rubio. I'm going to put my money down right now. Today is March 31st, the last day of March in 2026. I think that Gavin Newsom smokes these people. Because one, I don't think we actually have elections, and I think he's the next guy up. I think they've been grooming him for a very long time, and I don't think Marco Rubio has the charisma, the panache. I don't think that his performance on this stage about war is going to resonate with anybody at all. I think you just lost it. I think you lost it because of the domestic agenda. Sorry, I'm not thrilled about a Governor Newsom at all. I think it's the worst thing that could happen. But I also think that this is where we're at. So here's the White House press secretary being asked a question about what does the Pope say about this? Remember, they forged a lot of alliances, and whether you like it or not, my friends at Catholic Vote carried the Catholic vote to help Donald Trump get elected. That is not people that are explicitly one party or another. I think they're probably closer to bacon cheeseburger nationalists, just being a Catholic for 40 years and being around people like that.
You said yesterday, and I quote him, God does not listen to the prayer of those who wage war. Can you comment on that?
I think our nation was a nation founded 250 years ago almost on Judeo-Christian values, and we've seen presidents, we've seen the leaders of the Department of War, and we've seen our troops go to prayer during the most turbulent times in our nation's history. And I don't think there's anything wrong with our military leaders or with the president calling on the American people to pray for our service members and those who are serving our country overseas. In fact, I think it's a very noble thing to do. And if you talk to many service members, they will tell you they appreciate the prayers and support from the Commander-in-Chief and from his cabinet.
Yeah, there's nothing about the Commander-in-Chief that tells me he's a Christian. And the most important thing, and this is the thing I think needs to be said, I have heard zero inkling. There is no instinct whatsoever for this administration to tell us that this war is just. And that is the Christian principle that is missing. Just war. It's a concept. Maybe we'll do a whole show on it. Maybe I can get somebody who's an expert on that ethical and that theological topic. Just war is what's required. And there are conditions that need to be met. And there's nothing about this particular conflict that indicates to me, mostly because they were out there trying to push that imminence narrative and they ran away from that right away. Just war is what's required for there to be a real prayer for victory. We can pray that our troops come home safely, but they could do that today. They could pull everyone out. Or you could have Fox News tell you that it's all going to happen. And Fox News alert, that kind of stuff. That's kind of where we're at right now. All right. I appreciate all of you guys joining us. Thank you for being part of the program. I've got a palate cleanser as usual. We'll do something to kind of get our mouth clean from all that nastiness that's out there. Subscribe on Rumble, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com. I appreciate all of you guys. If you want to follow me, it's at Kyle Seraphin. It's very easy to do. We can mix it up on social medias. I'm there way too much, but that's why I don't believe in the democracy piece. And also the fact that I drive out there looking for mean tweets and cheap gas, and I got neither. It's really disappointing. All right, here's something from the Instagram. It is on board with, I didn't make this. This is a produced skit made by a couple of young people who are younger than me that are looking around and going, nah, I don't think things are the same way they were when we made Monopoly 50 or 80 years ago. It feels like things are a little bit different. So here's the updated rules for Monopoly 2026. It's kind of funny. It's also kind of sad. It's also kind of accurate.
Netanyahu needs money. Pay $400. Oh, BB.
All right, I'll go first. All right, I'll buy it.
Okay, that's going to be $2,000.
Wait, but we all start with $1,500.
Yeah, dude, it's Monopoly 2026. Everything is super expensive. If you can't buy the property, you can rent it out.
Wait, what happens when we pass go? Do we still collect $200?
No, you have to pay your student loans, so you pay the bank $200.
Oh. Sucks. I just pulled you over because you look Mexican and you don't have your passport on you? Go directly to jail? How do I get out?
It says you have to roll a 13 or higher.
That's impossible.
Or you have to pass the U.S. citizenship test, and I have a list of questions right here.
Oh.
Pay up.
How much?
12 to me, 200 to the bank. Screw renting, man.
How many amendments does the Constitution have?
4.
Wrong, 27.
Community chest. Your OnlyFans is popping off. Collect 50 from every player. Yes!
What are the 3 branches of government?
Legislative, executive, and judicial.
Wow, that's correct. Nice.
Man, Yahoo needs more money? Pay $5,000?
I don't make the rules.
How many people are ready to just flip over the game board on this? Right? I think a bunch. Unfortunately, I've seen this skit a couple times. It's funny. It's clever. It's kind of accurate. I think that actually shows how many people are fed up. I wish all of you guys a lovely Tuesday. Don't forget, we've got a special deal running. I guess Skip is going to turn on the double discount for our Patriot Protect, who is our sponsor. Link in the show description. Support the sponsors. Support the show. There's an affiliate link as well for all the other people out there. If you're looking for a gun safe, if you're looking for firearms pieces, if you're looking for some other stuff, beef jerky and so on, all those things are listed on our locals page. You can get there for free. You don't have to even be a member. God bless all of you guys. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for April Fool's Day. I'm going to try to keep it serious tomorrow because somebody should. See you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.